Can you hear me now? Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to day 3 of the 2015 Information Assurance Symposium. Before we move any further, I want to just take a few minutes to thank some of our folks that have been absolutely critical to making this happen. First of all, my staff, Sherry, Amita, Ivan, Lisa, Cheyenne, Marilyn, Cecily, Karen, as well as those who had to stay home and keep the office running this week. Clearly all members of the IAS planning and execution staff, including our track leads, our room monitors, our committee members at large from DoD, DISA, Cyber Command, and NSA, our content managers, and our protocol team, Morgana and Laura. I want to thank especially Mike O'Neill, Bob Jefferson, Gil Aris from the Federal Business Council who have helped us put this on, including their audio-visual, graphics, and closed captioning teams. Matt Law and his team who have done the registration, and of course all of our exhibitors. And finally, Kim Demick and her team here at the Washington Convention Center. I have undoubtedly missed someone, but would you please join me in thanking all of them and the ones that I've missed. A few announcements. Our briefing slides will be posted to the iad.gov website under the Events tab for all of those briefers who have given us consent to post their slides, so that's all the track slides. On Monday, you will receive an email from us with a link asking you to give us some feedback on this conference. We encourage you to do that. We'd like to make the next IAS as good as we possibly can, and your feedback will be critical to helping us do that. It is currently our intention to try and hold these on a yearly basis, so please watch for the announcements of upcoming IAS in the future. There are a couple of cancellations of tracks today. First of all, track 1 at 3:30 this afternoon in room 204B. It was called the Inside Scoop. That has been canceled. And track 4 at 11 o'clock in room 206, DoD Cyber Discipline, has been canceled. Finally, we have found a bracelet. If you have lost a bracelet, please stop by the speaker desk and you can reclaim that. As we now start the general session of this third day, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Aaron Hughes. Aaron is the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Cyber Policy. He oversees the development and implementation of cyber policies, strategies, and plans that guide the Department of Defense's efforts in cyberspace. Prior to his appointment in May of this year, Aaron was Vice President of Intelligence Community Support at the strategic investment firm In-Q-Tel. He's an active member of the Maryland Air National Guard, where he serves as Director of Mission Integration for the 175th Cyber Operations Group. He is also a certified mission commander in one of the 3 Air National Guard national mission teams in the Cyber Mission Force. Would you please join me in welcoming Aaron to our stage?
Good morning, and thank you, Murray, for that kind introduction. And thank you, Kurt, for hosting this conference and inviting me to speak. It's truly a pleasure to join you here today. So for those of you that were here on Monday, you heard that Kurt is a diehard Florida Gators fan. You know, given that Marianne and I, who follow me, are both Virginia Cavalier alums, and we recently eliminated Florida en route to our College World Series championship, I have to say I'm especially grateful for being able to take the stage this morning. So thank you again, Kurt. For those of you in the audience familiar with my office, the Office of Cyber Policy within OSD, you may notice that I'm not Eric Rosenbach, who was originally scheduled to speak with you this morning. So I'm sorry to disappoint there. Eric has a multitude of hats that he wears within the department. So he's the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Homeland Defense and Global Security. He's the Principal Cyber Advisor to the Secretary, and he's also the Deputy Chief of Staff to Secretary Carter. So he's especially busy, and he sends his regrets, and he sends me this morning. Eric and my predecessor, Major General John Davis, advanced the department's cyber policies and collaboration across the interagency and with industry, and I absolutely aim to continue that effort. Today is in fact my first public appearance as Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Cyber Policy, and I'd like to use this opportunity to discuss some of my office's priorities as I see them. I've been involved in national defense topics and have worked at the intersection of public policy, technology, and industry for the majority of my career, and I see the challenge we face as a department in building a sustainable cyber force with high-end capabilities. Again on Monday, Michael Daniel was here, and he said in his job, he's the herder of interagency cats for cyber. And that got me thinking for a moment. My job is basically to help herd the big cats in DoD. I think we all know how that story ends. I'm far more likely to get eaten than Michael is. Especially now that I'm so new in the Pentagon, but after years of visiting, I'm still learning my way around. For those of you that have been in the Pentagon, you know you have to navigate from 1 Echo 800 to 5 Delta 435. Never mind the so-called half corridors that you can lost and lose 10 minutes absolutely every time. And I'm still looking for the supposed sub-basement that's in the Pentagon somewhere. You know, one way to situate yourself in the Pentagon, both geographically and historically, is through the art on the wall. Today I'm going to speak with you a bit about DoD's new cyber strategy, as well as our focus on deterrence and innovation. To give us some context, I'd like to start with a painting and a story to help visualize our present situation in cyber with greater clarity. If you walk down the Secretary of Defense hallway, halfway down the corridor on the left, you'll find a portrait of Secretary Robert Gates. In his portrait, he has the sun behind him, the light glimmers off his desk, and on the corner of his desk sits a model truck. It's a model of an MRAP, a mine-resistant ambush protected vehicle. Imagine for a moment, 50 years, a youngster may walk down the hall of the Secretary's corridor and ask his or her grandmother why the man in the picture has a little truck on his desk. It's there because Secretary Gates, then Senator Joe Biden, and a small group of determined Marines pressured the Pentagon to respond to an urgent battlefield need. The MRAP program was a massive surge of innovation and organization. During the counterinsurgency campaigns in Afghanistan and Iraq, the enemy learned to detonate IEDs remotely under our Humvees. These nasty bombs ended lives and sent our men and women home, often gravely wounded in mind and body. The enemy innovated on the battlefield and caught us vulnerable. The Pentagon responded slowly at first, but through the leadership and concerted pressure of a few, the bureaucracy saw how the MRAP's V-shaped hole could reduce battlefield casualties. Through Secretary Gates' leadership, the government partnered with the private sector to build and deploy the MRAP quickly to protect our women and men. Thousands across the country worked long hours to build and haul those massive trucks off the line and into the theater. For Secretary Gates, this model truck became a powerful symbol, not only of innovation, but proof that the bureaucracy could move quickly to save lives. We gather here today, almost 10 years after that initial push for the MRAP. The world has changed in many ways, but one constant is that the national security of our country is defined in part by the nexus of international politics and technology. In a resource-constrained environment, we must make hard choices about how to invest and where to innovate. The MRAP, of course, is a unique and dramatic story of defense innovation, but in a manner similar to the demands placed on Secretary Gates almost a decade ago, today the cyber threats to our country outstrip our defenses and leave our nation at risk. Networks are penetrated, data is stolen, critical assets are held at risk. All these happen on a daily basis. For future secretaries, the model that they may place on their desk may be an image of a secure, interoperable, and open internet, one that connects all the warfighting domains and provides the platform for global connectivity. But good luck to the artists trying to draw that one. The future shape of our cybersecurity is up to you. The network defenders that work day in and day out to secure our systems, the red teamers that break through our defenses to drive constant improvement, the developers that build the tools we need, and the acquisition professionals who know the difference between a system of promise and electronic vaporware. And while we all do this work at a particular moment, as two major trends in technology now converge upon us and impact our strategic approach. First, the United States is perhaps the most cyber vulnerable nation on the earth. Again, no surprise to many of us in the audience here today. We are bound together by the internet that connects the cyber and physical worlds. The technology that touches all of us can be disrupted by just a few. The internet was not originally designed with security in mind, but as a way for scientists to transmit data to one another quickly. As a result, the networks and systems that connect our infrastructure are as accessible to hackers in Moscow, Beijing, or Tehran as they are to their American owners, and in some cases, more so. And we have moved from an era of web defacements to an era of data destruction, as the North Korea attack shows. The risks we face are not new, and they're not news. I hope you join me in looking twice at anyone who characterizes recent events as a wake-up call. What is news is that as a government and a private sector, the United States has rounded the corner and is absolutely ready to embrace the changes required. The degree of intrusions, data theft, and data destruction has reached and affected mainstream Americans. My 95-year-old grandmother, who experienced the evolution of the airplane, the development of the first nuclear bomb, and the space race to land a man on the moon, actually understands what it means that her grandson works in cybersecurity. This is not just an industry for security specialists. So many aspects of our economy and national security are tied to a safe, available, and reliable internet. Folks want to trust the integrity of their data. Within the government, we have made progress in building organizations, strategies, and capabilities we need to drive change. Cybersecurity is at the top of President Obama's and Secretary Carter's agendas, and rarely does a public speaking event pass without a mention of cyber norms. The private sector has advanced as well. Entrepreneurs are building capabilities, cybersecurity markets are developing, and CISOs have moved from the depths of the IT org charts to the boardroom in quick order. Investors have begun to measure value not only by profit, but by the degree to which data and systems are protected. This is true for the banking industry especially, but other sectors as well. We're at a moment of transition in our cyber story, and we must seize it. Now, a technological trend that's perhaps larger than the first. As a nation and across the full range of military technology, we are in an innovation race to stay ahead of potential adversaries who have similarly advanced technologies. This goes well beyond cyber to include space, missile, and air technologies, as well as technologies we haven't seen or even imagined as of yet. Previously, the United States and Defense Department played a dominant role in technology innovation. The advances guaranteed our strategic advantage. Defense investments spun off and benefited the civilian sector, such as with GPS and the ARPANET. But today, the United States is no longer the only technological game in town. The diffusion of innovation outside the United States to countries like India, Brazil, China, Russia, has enabled states to leap ahead. And in the United States, DoD takes a backseat to the speed of innovation often found in the private sector. An example there is today, Apple has enough cash on hand to buy the entire defense industrial base as characterized by market cap. You know, I say, show me the money, and I'll show you where innovation has been institutionalized and is most prominent. We must make a concerted push to discover technology for our long-term military advantage. This is a top priority for Deputy Secretary Bob Work, who leads the Defense Innovation Initiative. So these two trends, of a turning point in our cyber story and the need for defense innovation, now align in confluence. Together, they were a driving force in the development for our new strategy, which I will walk you through right now. The purpose of our new strategy, which is the department's second, is to guide the development of DoD's cyber force and strengthen our cyber defense and cyber deterrence posture. It focuses on building cyber capabilities and organizations for DoD's three primary missions: to defend DoD networks, systems, and information, to defend the nation against cyber attacks of significant consequence, and to provide cyber support to operational and contingency plans. This strategy is fundamentally a tool for managing change. It sets clear strategic goals and objectives for DoD to achieve over the next 5 years. Those strategic goals are to first, build and maintain ready forces and capabilities to conduct cyberspace operations. This goal will be met as the department builds out the cyber mission force, which hopefully many of you have heard about. This force is comprised of 133 teams across the defensive, offensive, and support spectrum. Second, we need to defend the DoD information networks, secure DoD data, and mitigate risks to DoD missions. Next, we need to be prepared to defend the U.S. homeland and U.S. vital interests from disruptive or destructive cyber attacks of significant consequence. Fourth, we need to build and maintain viable cyber options and plan to use those options to control conflict escalation. And finally, build and maintain a robust set of international alliances and partnerships to deter shared threats and increase international security and stability. Each of these goals has specific objectives, and each objective has a due date that we have set for ourselves internally. And a number of our objectives are vital for our deterrence posture. Deterring disruptive and destructive cyber attacks on the nation requires a comprehensive approach that spans agencies of the government and the private sector. Deterrence is absolutely a function of perception. It works by convincing a potential adversary that the costs of conducting any attack on us outweigh any potential benefits. Within this equation, there are three major requirements. First, as part of our strategy, we must increase our denial capabilities to tilt any adversary's cost-benefit in our favor. As Secretary Carter has stated, our most important cyber mission is to defend our own information networks, data, and systems. Without secure systems, DoD cannot do any of the missions in the physical world. We must grow our defensive teams to protect our assets and implement best-in-class technical solutions. The private sector is absolutely key here. Last month, the DoD CIO, Terry Halverson, who spoke to this conference yesterday, led a team of DoD senior leaders to Silicon Valley to engage with venture capital firms and cybersecurity companies. We heard the same resounding message from startups and well-established Fortune 100 companies. The private sector is committed to building network defense capabilities, and together we can help deliver technology for the nation. In addition to network defense, DoD has the mission to defend the nation against cyber attacks of significant consequence, which include loss of life, destruction of property, or significant foreign or economic policy consequences. We must build and maintain capabilities to prevent or stop such cyber attacks from achieving their effect. This is an important part of our denial toolkit. But here's the story. Network defenders in the private sector must be the first line of defense against cyber intrusions. Basic investments and best practices, which Terry calls cyber basics, can stop 90% of the intrusions we see today. And I can't emphasize this point enough. Companies must invest in the basic cybersecurity solutions if we are to deter and deny attacks as a country. Right now, too many doors are unlocked in cyberspace, and this leaves us vulnerable. But there may be instances where the government may need to take action against those who cause us harm in cyberspace. As determined on a case-by-case basis, the President or Secretary of Defense may direct DoD to conduct defensive cyber operations to stop cyber attacks from impacting our interests. This is a hard mission. It's intelligence-based. It requires high-end capabilities and highly trained teams. We're building the national mission teams and deepening our partnerships with FBI, DHS, and CIA to support this mission. We must be able to use our complementary capabilities and authorities to achieve our objectives. Now, for the second part of the deterrence equation, in the event that our denial capabilities fail, the DoD and the United States as a whole must be resilient to potential cyber attacks that could impact our interests. For DoD, we must be prepared to operate in a degraded cyber environment. We must train to operate in the dark. As a generation, we've grown accustomed to reaching in our pocket and having near constant connectivity to nearly all the world's information with zero downtime. In conflict, that connectivity cannot be expected. We must develop systems and processes to mitigate any potential disruptions. If we can fly our ships, pilot our planes, and guide our missiles in a contested cyber environment, there's no better measure of our deterrence. Outside of DoD, we require a resilient infrastructure to underpin our operations. We must work with DHS, the private sector, and our international partners to ensure the cybersecurity and resilience of critical infrastructure on which we all rely. This will require organizations to focus on the assets that matter most. It will also require technical solutions. In Silicon Valley, we heard that IT companies have begun to develop cyber resiliency portfolios. This is a new market, and solutions are just coming online. As a government, we know that we need scalable solutions for the country, for our military services, for critical infrastructure owners, and for mom-and-pop companies across the country. We'll work with the private sector to help test and develop viable solutions. Finally, in the event of a cyber attack on U.S. interests, the United States must be able to respond to an attack through cyber or non-cyber means to impose costs on a potential adversary. Throughout this administration, we have articulated our declaratory policy that the United States will respond to a cyber attack on its interests in a time, in a manner, in a place of our choosing. The President said so most recently following the North Korea cyber attack on Sony Pictures Entertainment. One of our key objectives in our strategy is to develop cyber options to hold an aggressor at risk in cyberspace if required. But in many instances, non-cyber tools may be more appropriate or effective as a response. There may be times when the President may determine that sanctions are appropriate, or that the use of kinetic capabilities may be required. Any response option will be determined on a case-by-case basis, again, by the President and the National Security Team, and governed by the law of armed conflict. As a department, we are focused on these three aspects of deterrence: denial, resilience, and response, but underpinning each of these is a viable attribution capability. Through intelligence and improved forensics, we have significantly improved our ability to attribute attacks and will continue to do so. Beyond deterrence, there is so much more within the document that we're doing to support our three missions. I'd be remiss if I didn't put in a plug for you to download, check out, or read our strategy, so please do so at defense.gov/cyberstrategy. Our strategy presents an aggressive plan to capture this current moment to improve our collective cybersecurity. Now, we in DoD rarely build anything ourselves. That was true of the MRAPs, and it will most certainly be true for cyber. We need the private sector to succeed. That is part of why we have launched the Defense Innovation Initiative for the department's broader innovation needs, and it will absolutely be crucial for our success in the cyber domain. As one part of this initiative, we are setting up a presence in Silicon Valley. We call this unit Defense Innovation Unit Experimental, or DIUX. This was announced by the Secretary during his visit to Silicon Valley back at the end of April. DIUX will serve as a forward presence and coordination body in Silicon Valley to see new technologies, learn from innovators, and provide a presence to liaise with companies. We expect DIUX to also convene forums and hopefully deepen partnerships with organizations in Silicon Valley. In addition to DIUX, we're building a partnership with Incutel. Earlier this spring, again, the Secretary announced an initial pilot project. If successful, we envision an expanded program to focus on the critical IT and security challenges shared between the intelligence community and DoD. We must work quickly to develop and deploy the capabilities that we need for the country. There are too many insecure systems, and we are not yet resilient. We are lagging behind the threat. In our department and as a country, we rise to many hard problems. That is who we are. We saw it with the MRAP, where our women and men worked in 24-hour shifts to get trucks off the line and through the air bridge to protect our troops on the ground. We see it today as our contractors, military, and civilian personnel strive to build the forces and capabilities we need to conduct cyber operations. Like the internet itself, the characters and technology in our cyber story are distributed, and many of the most important plot lines happen behind the scenes. Our actions are not always easily perceived or understood by the public. But across the country, in operation centers, schoolhouses, and labs, our women and men are striving to develop solutions. These actions secure our interests in the physical world and help save lives. We do this work at an important moment in our cyber evolution. We have the commitment of our leaders. Again, President Obama, Secretary Carter, and Deputy Secretary Work are focused on making a difference. CEOs and managing partners across the private sector are as well. Each of us has a role and opportunity to make change. Consider just a few of the issues that we have before us. How will we secure our most important weapon systems? How will we ensure that the JIE becomes all it can be? How will cyber affect our future alliances and partnerships internationally? We must answer these and many other questions to achieve the goals we have set for ourselves. It comes down to you. It comes down to each of us. We must be relentless in implementing change and developing capabilities, and we absolutely must succeed. When we do, when we look back in 20 to 30 years, when we see the records on the wall, the portraits of subsequent leaders, when we look back at the lines of malware that never broke through, we will see how we made a difference and remember what we achieved for the country. I look forward to working with you in this effort. Again, thank you very much.